I guess how important is it to, have people support or companies support the AFLW, and what does it show about the league?
Yeah, it's critical. I know. I mean, the reality is it's still, a competition that's growing and emerging. I think we all see the potential of it, and it's at that really interesting phase where we're essentially not far off, I think anyway, moving to full time. Many moons ago, I was drafted to Sydney in 1994, and in the men's program at that point in time, we were training in the afternoons because guys had full-time jobs. And in a blink of an eye in 1997, you couldn't hold down a full-time job. And really our W program, I think, nearly at a similar inflection point. And so it's going to be completely sustainable. It's going to head to a full season. But the support of the likes blue chip companies, global organisations that we're lucky enough to have support our entire club, but particularly our W program's absolutely critical. So we're incredibly appreciative of DP World in that respect.
Simon, multiple premierships by 2025. It's still possible.
Straight to the footy, Steve. It's one question. Thought I might get two. You say you're a commercial guy. Come on.
Does it put a bit of pressure on the coming campaign?
No, look, well, we've got two campaigns left in W, with one obviously upcoming, where we hold great hopes. No pressure, Webby. And obviously next year in the men's program. Look, we knew when we launched our strategic plan in 2021 that it'd attract some critics, it'd put some pressure on us as an organisation, but we'd much prefer to be a club that sets ourselves high goals and aims and aspirations. At the risk of potentially not achieving them, then just quietly going about your work, and then if things don't work out, then you haven't got anyone calling you out to that regard. We think, despite the absolute disappointment of the result on the weekend and us not achieving an aim of playing finals this year, that there's a lot that's in a good place, and we feel the foundations are incredibly strong. So we think there's time to achieve that aim, and just as importantly, set ourselves up for a sustained run of success as well.
You've put heavy investment in the men's program, in long-term contracts with people. Sean Darcy has struggled to get out there, and you miss him when he's not available. What are you going to do in the off-season to try to get his body into a position where he can play more?
Yeah, we'll put everything that you'd expect us to, Craig, in relation to supporting Sean to get right. He's a critical player to us, as we know. You see the data and the numbers when he's playing, and when he's playing with Luke, the impact that has from a win-loss perspective. He hasn't had a good run of it, to be frank. He's been unlucky in a number of ways. However, Sean's got a massive opportunity in the off-season. We'll just explore what exactly he needs to do from a recovery and rehabilitation point of view, to ensure that he can come back on day one of pre-season in the best possible shape to attack what's a really important year for the club and he.
Do you worry about him and his longevity given the injuries that he has had?
No, not really. I think there's opportunities, and there's countless examples and precedents of players who've had some challenges like that who've ended up going and playing for a decade post some of these challenges. Clearly, we're a well-resourced club that has access to a great medical and high-performance team and every resource you could want in that regard. So we'll pull all our strength around that to ensure we give Sean the best chance, and then he's got to get to work and make sure that he can give himself the best possible chance as well.
You signed Justin Longmuir for another year, start of the year. Is he still the man to lead this club in 2025? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we're not where we want to be right now. That's pretty plain and obvious. But what we are as a club is incredibly aligned on the journey that we're on, exactly where we're at right now, and the work that we need to complete to get to where we want to get to. Justin and his entire coaching staff, on a daily basis, are driving standards to get us to that level, that premiership level of standards, if you like. We're not quite there yet, but there is, as you can tell by the season, when you look at the fact that I think we're in the 8 for 18 or 19 weeks at round 20. We're 12.5 wins and we're sitting third. Percentage that oscillated between 110 and 120. They're all measures of a team that clearly got the capability to compete with the best and contend, but ultimately we weren't good enough this year and we couldn't do it for long enough. So we think there's a lot right in our program, but it's critical that our members and supporters understand there's no relaxation on that. we've got to get to work and understand exactly what we need to do to get better. And JL's absolutely the man to drive that in our men's program.
So what is it at the moment? You mentioned you have everything you need. So is it a lack of experience? Is it a mental thing at the moment?
I didn't say we had everything we need. I said we've got a lot that's right, but we need to continue to add, to improve, to get better. It's interesting, most people expect that it's at this time of year that you look to review and try and figure out and understand where you need to get better. But in our world, it's a constant review process, whether it's from the week that's just gone, leading into the following week where you're trying to win a game of footy. It's a daily basis. It's such a cutthroat industry. It doesn't give up its rewards easily. We think from a pure football perspective in our men's program that we've got a backline group that clearly can stand up and hold opposition to reasonable scores, a midfield team that we saw started to grow and emerge, and a group of players clearly who are able to at times dominate from a contested possession and clearance perspective. And we've got a forward group that's driven by 3 young developing players who we think have significant upside. So there's some foundations there, but we clearly weren't good enough at this point in time. So we'll clearly look to improve from a list perspective, and then we'll examine every part of our football operations to ascertain what we need to do to continue to improve.
To a few big name players, is there a limit on how many you feel you can bring in?
Yeah, there's a salary cap, Steve, and there's and there's list spots that limit how many you can bring in. Sorry, you just made that too easy, mate. Look, I don't think you're going to see mountains of changes to our list. There's not going to be a wholesale. We've been to the draft for a significant period, really from that sort of 17, 18 time frame. As I said, I think we've got the nucleus and a base and foundation of a team that can contend on a sustained basis. But there's always opportunities to improve. We've got a strong draft hand, so we'll examine every avenue open to us in a pretty aggressive way to ensure that we continue to improve. Now, as you say, there's names that we're linked to, which are just discussions and stories at the moment, but our members and fans understand that we won't be shy in exploring those options, whether they be through trade, free agency, uncontracted players, or the draft itself.
Will Shea Bolton be a Docker in 2025?
I'm clearly not going to go into details specific to certain players, but again, as I said, we're not going to put any limitations on anyone. We've got a good record in recent years of players coming to our club who have made a difference and been significant. Some of them, making all-Australian squads and AFL 22 under-22 teams, and we think are going to be significant players in our future success, so we'll continue down that path.
Okay, it's been bold. We've heard Christian Petrarca is keen to get out of Melbourne and stay in Victoria. Would you be bold enough to try to convince him?
Christian Petrarca is keen to get out of Melbourne but stay in Victoria.
Yeah, out of Melbourne.
Right.
Stay in Victoria. Would you be bold enough to make a phone call there and attempt to get him over here?
Well, Christian's contracted for another 6 years. All the noise I hear about the Melbourne Footy Club, that they're not even going to consider that. So it's difficult, Craig, to go into individual details. Christian's a fantastic player. I think any club would love to have him on his list, but that feels a bit more like a speculative one to me than a reality.
That approach to re-sign Justin, sort of before the start of the season, how do you sort of reflect on that, bid for security and blocking out the noise now, because you're going to be in a very familiar situation come December, January again?
Yeah, we didn't do it to block out noise. We sat down, obviously in my role and talked to the footy committee and the board and Justin about where he was at, and it was a decision we felt was in the best interest and achieved a great balance between the club's interests and Justin's themselves. It's fascinating in reality. I mean, 4 weeks ago we had media pundits talking about the fact that we should be extending him then for another 3 years, and roll the movie forward 4 weeks and we haven't performed at our level, and we're having this sort of conversation. So we don't at all take into account what the external looks like. We just try to figure out what's in the best interest of the club, best interest of our employee, to get the best results for the team. So that was a motivation behind doing it at that point in time. It's not on our radar at the moment. We've got more pressing matters to work through as we dissect the season just gone and start planning for season 2025, but we'll work through that at the right time.
Nat Fife, do you have an update on whether he'll be playing on next year?
Yeah, Nat's contracted, so expect him to be playing next year. Look, I understand the noise and the queries around Nat, and there's been commentary around Sonny as well too. There's a balance to reach from a list management point of view. You take those two players out and Jaeger, and then we wouldn't have a player over 30 playing on the weekend. We put no limits on what we could achieve this year, and we're bitterly disappointed because we think it's a missed opportunity for us to have gone the way we'd set the season up and where we were placed to go deep and have a crack at a premiership. So we're gutted in that regard. However, we do have a young core of a list. So the art of list management is to ensure you've got balance in that regard. And I think there's an element whereby people hold Nat and Sonny and greats of the game to levels of them at their peak. That wasn't our expectation internally. They provide significant experience and wise heads and capability on the field in different ways than players who are coming through. We're seeing the transition of our midfield as an example, that it's now Andy and Caleb and Hayden and Sean's midfield, whereas 3 years ago it still belonged to Nat because of the dominance of him, and he's playing a really important role in that transition. So we'll just continue to work through that with those guys.
What excites you about the girls kicking off on Saturday for this season, and can you see them returning to finals?
Yeah, I can see a world where we're returning to finals, absolutely, Liza. Yeah, I'm just unbelievably excited. We've done a significant amount of work. We love our coach. We think she's a star. Just don't tell her I said that, because she gets ahead of herself from time to time when she gets compliments. And it's been a really, really specific build where we've looked to get people of high capabilities and skill set, but have an approach from a cultural perspective that's really in keeping with where we want to go as an organisation, and Lisa epitomises that. Now second year as coach, changing a lot about the way the program operates, the way the team plays. So really looking forward to seeing how that evolves. You mentioned finals, Liza, so we're absolutely enthusiastic about that, but that's kind of a byproduct for us. We're trying to build a W program that not dissimilar to our men's that contends on a sustained basis. And as we said at the top, a couple of our leaders and gun veterans are out, but I'm incredibly excited to see what some of the new players that we've brought into our organisation. Gabby obviously mentioned there before. Ash McCarthy's come in, the two Gabbies who are here. We've brought some fantastic people in, so can't wait to see it. The first two games in the pre-season are encouraging, but they're just pre-season games. So, we'll get to learn a lot more on Saturday at Windy Hill. Sounds like an enticing place to go to, doesn't it? We'll learn a lot more on Saturday and then, move into the season proper when we get back to Fremantle Oval in round 3.